Good morning, everybody. Ponylover1989 here, and I am still trying to protect my kitten from my aunt's killer dog. So the kitten is in my bedroom. He's very well playful and active, and he is very potty trained. He is very well potty trained, I can tell you that much. The last 7 parts I told you about is how Pokemon became a popular phenomenon with the video games and the anime, and I'm telling you what the Pokemon are and what they really look like. So now I'm going to be telling you about the video games. The originals Red and Green came out on February 27, 1996 for the Game Boy. The anime premiered in April 1st, 1997 on TV Tokyo. The anime came to the US here in September 7th, 1998, and the games later, September 28th. Pokemon Red and Blue came out for the Game Boy in September 28th, 1998. The player controls an overhead perspective, navigates through a fictional region of Kanto in a quest to master Pokemon battling. The goal of the games is to become the champion of the Elite Four by defeating 8 gym leaders and then the top 4 Pokemon trainers in the land, the Elite Four. And another objective is to complete the Pokédex, an in-game encyclopedia containing 151 Pokemon. It utilizes the Game Link cable, which connects the 2 game systems together, which allows Pokemon to be traded and or battled between the games. So the objective is to capture all the wild Pokemon that are found in the wild. The games take place in a region called Kanto, the Kanto region, which is based on the real-life Kanto region in Japan. The player begins his journey in a town of Palatown, and after venturing alone into the tall grass, the player is stopped by Professor Oak, a famous Pokemon researcher. Then Professor Oak explains to the player that wild Pokemon may be living in tall grass, and encountering them without a Pokemon can be very dangerous. Then he takes the player to his laboratory, where the player meets his grandson, the rival, an aspiring Pokemon trainer. And then you and the rival have the option to choose one of the 3 starter Pokemon to begin your journey with. Bulbasaur, a grass type, Charmander, a fire type, or Squirtle, a water type. And after you pick your starter, your rival will then choose the starter that has a type advantage against your starter. And then you're engaged into a Pokemon battle with the newly obtained Pokemon. And will continue to battle the player at certain points throughout the games. And while visiting the region cities, the player will encounter special establishments called the gyms in cities. Inside of these gyms are gym leaders that serve as sort of a boss fight in the game, of each whom the player must defeat in a Pokemon battle to obtain the total of 8 gym badges. And once you collect the 8 gym badges, the player is given permission to enter the Indigo Plateau, which consists of the most powerful, best Pokemon trainers in the region. And there the player will battle the Elite Four, and finally, the new champion, your rival. Also, and throughout the game, you'll have to battle against the forces of Team Rocket, an evil criminal organization that uses and abuses Pokemon for their dirty work and various crimes. They devised numerous plans for stealing rare Pokemon, in which the player must foil and defeat. And also the objective is finding wild Pokemon in the tall grass and caves, fishing, and surfing in bodies of water, capturing them in a Pokeball, and writing down the entries to your device called a Pokédex. When the games came out for Game Boy, they were well received with the critics, praising the multiplayer options, especially the concept of trading. They've received an aggregated score of 89% from game rankings and are considered among the greatest games ever made. Perennially ranked on top of the games list, including at least 4 years of IGN's top 100 best video games of all time. The game's releases mark the beginning of what would become a multi-billion-dollar franchise, jointly selling over 300 million copies worldwide. In 2009, they were declared by IGN to be the best RPG on Game Boy and best-selling RPG of all time. The next one is Pokemon Yellow, which is an enhanced version of Red and Blue version. The story is basically the same, except that the only starter that you have to choose in the game is Pikachu, and the rival takes an Eevee. It is loosely based on the Indigo Plateau saga of the anime series and features characters that were not featured in the game and have been enhanced to resemble the designs of the pixelated Pokemon that appear in the anime, including the Team Rocket trio, Nurse Joy, and Officer Jenny. Similar to the anime, Pikachu refuses to evolve. Players are given the opportunity to obtain all the 3 starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. And as the player goes on, they gradually progress to capturing Pokemon to complete the Pokédex, which they will use to defeat the 8 gym leaders, collect the 8 gym badges, and eventually the Indigo Plateau to defeat the Elite Four, and all the while battling Team Rocket, a gang devoted to using Pokemon in order to make themselves more powerful. By the time of the encounter with the Elite Four, the player has the opportunity to capture all 149 different species. But in a post-game, after you beat the game, the player will enter the final location, the Cerulean Cave, where Mewtwo, the final Pokemon, can be found, battled, and or captured. The last Pokemon in the Pokédex, Mew, cannot be captured during ordinary gameplay. The yellow version was very well received by the critics, holding an aggregated score of 85% from the game rankings based on 16 reviews, making it the 5th highest rated Game Boy game of all time. Nintendo gave it an 8 out of 10, while Game Informer gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Electric Playground gave it a 7.5 out of 10. The Sarasota Herald Tribune recommended Yellow as a good game for kids. RPG Fan called it so revoltingly addictive that any player of it has no choice but to catch 'em all. They also called Yellow insulting in how the limited editions from Red and Blue were. IGN's Craig Harris praised the game's mechanics and commenting that Yellow was the best game of the 3 to start with. He gave it a perfect score. GameSpot's Cameron Davis called it a stopgap to appease the players until the release of Gold and Silver, commenting that the new challenges are enough to fill a hole, but only just. Game Daily's Chris Buffa listed it as one of the best Pokemon games, commenting that while it has a rehash, that was enough that was new to warrant playing. All Games' Brad Cook commented that those who didn't play Red and Blue, Yellow is good, but otherwise he advised that that's the wait until Gold and Silver. The Daily Telegraph's Steve Boxer commented, while it has good gameplay mechanics, it was held back by the lack of features. He described Nintendo's actions as avaricious, commenting that Yellow marks the point where Pokemon ceases to become a game and become a market exercise and obsession satisfier. Pokemon Yellow had been nominated for the Game of the Year and Console Game of the Year during the third annual AIAS Interactive Achievement Awards, who are now known as the DICE Awards. The next game is Pokemon Gold and Silver. Now, these games were released in Japan in 1999 and came out in the US in October 15, 2000. It introduces 100 new species and follows the progress of a player character in order to complete the Pokédex to master Pokemon battling. Both of the games are independent of each other, but feature largely the same plot, while both can be played separately. It's necessary to trade between these games and these predecessors in order to fully complete the game's Pokédex. The Johto saga of the anime is based on this new region that was introduced in these versions of the game. The games Gold and Silver take place in a region of Johto, situated to the west of Kanto region from the previous Red and Blue versions, and 3 years after the conclusion from the previous games. The Johto region was inspired by Japan's Kansai and Tokai regions, with many of the region's temples and more traditional Japanese aesthetics finding their way through Johto. Just like in the previous Red and Blue version, the player receives the first Pokemon, a choice between Chikorita, a grass type, Cyndaquil, a fire type, and Totodile, a water type, from the region's Pokemon scientist Professor Elm, and then he begins his journey to collect 8 gym badges of the Johto region, capture all the Pokemon to fulfill his Pokédex entries, and challenge the Elite Four and the champion to become the region's new Pokemon Master. Opposing him is this mysterious red-haired boy, a rival who stole one of the starters from Professor Elm and regularly challenges the player to test his strength. The player will also encounter a villainous Team Rocket who has returned to seek out Giovanni, their previous leader, to return to the group for their former glory. Eventually, you have to defeat Team Rocket once and for all, then defeat the Elite Four after collecting 8 gym badges and become champion of the Pokemon League on the Indigo Plateau. The post-game, after beating the game, lets the player travel all the way to Kanto from their previous Red and Blue versions and challenge the gym leaders there, discovering how much 3 years have changed since the events of Red and Blue. And after defeating the Kanto region's gym leaders, the player is allowed to enter the final location in Johto, Mount Silver, home to the most powerful of wild Pokemon. And deep within the caves is Trainer Red, the player and protagonist from the Red and Blue version that you have to battle in the most difficult battle of the video games of all time. When Pokemon Gold and Silver came out, they were critically acclaimed by their release, being the highest ranked games in the series on Game Ranking. They are considered to be some of the best games in the entire series, as well as some of the most significant games of the 5th generation of video game consoles. They continued the enormous success of Red and Blue as Pokemon began to form into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The games almost matched the sales of Red and Blue. In 2010 had gone to sell over 23 million units, making them one of the best-selling games for Game Boy Color, and the 3rd best-selling game for the Game Boy family of systems.